Our next speaker is Professor Mukhtar AL Hashimi. His talk is titled Current Challenges and Future Outlook of the Private Healthcare Sectors, the Case of Bahrain.
Good afternoon, everybody. The good news that I am the last speaker before the key speaker. So I will try to make it fast and easy and interesting. Well, my talk today is about the challenges of private healthcare in Bahrain. And the reasons why I have taken this subject, because you will see as academic that there is a big relationship between what the healthcare sector is going right now through and also what the educational sectors has gone through. And you will see there is a lot of similarity because the healthcare sectors is part of the economic reform of this country since the last 20 years. And as we know that the Bahrain Economic Board and they have established an economic board, and the economic board, one of the perils is that the healthcare sectors need to be maintained and become well efficient, and also lead to what we call more economically scaled service. We will understand, as we have a guest from Europe, that there is also similarity when it comes to what we have in this part of the world to Europe. But it will always be important how do we go back to history. When we talk about the challenges of healthcare, we're going to understand there will be a dynamic shift within the dynamic of healthcare. Healthcare is a big investment in this part of the country. It's something that is being, as researchers, what do? You have an observation. From observation, you have phenomena. Then you start to question. Well, now, one of the observations, as me, I'm coming from a medical informatics field and involved in healthcare management and administrations, I find that one of the areas what they have is basically the observation that there is a lot of complaints, physicians have different opinion, and that's what I call it going through a transitional period. I have presented this research to NAHRA, which is the healthcare authority in Bahrain, and they are very well pleased by the finding and the interest. Matter of fact, I think this is something good, unique for the university, that we are doing a research which is going to impact directly to the decision makers in this country. Matter of fact, a copy of this study has been already sent to the top management in the Supreme Court and also of Health and NAHRA. Well, welcome everybody. First of all, we need to understand the healthcare ecosystems. And every systems, whether it's educational, whether it's healthcare, they have their own what we call the ecosystem. Now, Bahrain ecosystem healthcare is a very challenging, and it's one of these systems that basically going through big shift. Now, when we look at the government effort, you see in the last 30 years, the government has put too much money in it, and they have really established one of the best, well praised by the WHO, of a healthcare infrastructure. Particularly, this investment has been taken place since the 1970s because of the revenues in the oils, and started by creating what we call a baby boomers Bahraini professionals, which is, in my study, I call it the national private healthcare provider. Now, upon that, the healthcare in Bahrain has been, until today, almost, but since the last 2 years, been universal for Bahraini and non-Bahraini. And that is one of the reasons why there is a big burdens in the cost. Now, keep in mind, the populations of Bahrain has increased to around 64% in the last 25 years, which is make really a big burden when you are providing a free health care for national and non-national. Now, that's take me to the population of Bahrain. Currently is 1.5 million. Almost 50% are expats, and keep in mind these are the driving force for that given economy. When it comes to healthcare economics, which is very important, Bahrain has spent in 2015 $1.8 billion and it's spending around 7% of the government total budget. Now, that is another thing adding to the burden of healthcare with decision makers, that we are having an aging population, we're having a high cost on the healthcare, and we also having non-communicable diseases, mean diseases that is basically the modern diseases, cardiovascular, diabetes, cancers, and all of that. Now, going into the second, if you look, Bahrain has encouraged its local private healthcare, Bahraini, to start the private practice by having what we call limited private practice, then empower that with where Bahrainis, they go into what we call clinic and small hospitals. Well, all of that, it was a positive, but it was not really going in what we call importance, which is take to the transition where the government is shifting the burden from the government pocket to more towards society. As you see in this one, the population is growing and the diseases are non-communicable diseases. Now, at that point, when you compare the private healthcare, which is run by majority of Bahraini healthcare provider, which is not the existing now, is basically you'll see that government till today is really the major contributor to healthcare. Also, there are a lot of investment. So really, that's take us to another decisions where the government is said, well, I'm having a very high expensive healthcare system. At the same time, I'm having a private, but the private is not really ready to do what? To let me go into a national healthcare insurance, which is something required by the WHO and the World Bank. So in this case, the government has opened the foreign investment to go into what we call a more encouraging foreign investment in investing in a private healthcare. Now, keep in mind the phenomena. You have a phenomena of a local healthcare provider, Bahraini, which has happened to be medically trained, but not strategically trained for healthcare, strategic, and governance, and all of that. Well, in the same of token, what's happened? The foreign investment start opening the door. A lot of foreign investment came into the country, invested in big hospitals, invested in well-organized clinic, and what's happened to the locals? They were diluted. Not because of their specialty, but because of lack of what we call healthcare strategy. And if you look at that, it's the similarity same with what we call the educational system. Resulted in that is a big number of healthcare, foreign for healthcare, and penetrated the market, well established, they have a good protocol, good long-term strategy, and they are get into the market and create what we call a price war. Now, that price war happened to be that the prices goes down. In this case, the similarity of this. So even the foreign investors right now, they are not unique when it comes to very highly specialized medical care. Adding to the system, and that's where this study was very interested. Nahra is interested in it. Healthcare Authority in Bahrain interested in it. And they praised this study because we added to another dimension. And this dimension, there is accreditations. And if you know we are academic, we have gone through this. And there is here is that you have the healthcare providers, the competition. And here is you have the regulator, for example, the environmental control. And here you have the regulatory and the pharmacy and the price. So all this added to the cost that healthcare providers in Bahrain, a national body of healthcare providers, are facing a big challenge. Adding to these challenges in this model, technological, economical, social, competitiveness, and political. Now, all we know that the purchasing power of the people in this country, adding to the tax, adding to the electricity, it became weak. Reflecting on the dominance effect of the economic power, it's make that basically the healthcare provider, which is, I call it the national healthcare, the Bahraini, becoming a small independent in a clinic and in the centers, and only who is really basically is facing whom? Facing an international healthcare who have a long-term strategy and they have a well-established model and a proven business concept. Where if you, on contrast, you compare the local healthcare provider, the national private, you find them, they are busy what we call operational level. They are not into the strategical level because they were taken by surprise. They are also not trained. And this is add to us that we as educators in this university, we need to add a new specialty, has to do with healthcare management and healthcare strategy. This is one of the biggest topics that maybe we should look for it as a major. When you look into the higher costs, you will find that basically Nahra is asking for accreditation, is asking for a lot of these clinics to have an ambulance system, to have equipment contract, it have utility, it have a generators. This all add to the cost. So where this going to take us to? It's going to take us to the challenge that the current challenge that private healthcare is facing is a big competition from the international healthcare rivalries corporates. At the same time, there is a restructure in the healthcare industry, moving to a national healthcare, meaning the government is going to pull out. There will be a national insurance, and those who are going to take the pie and take the big market is the foreign investment in a healthcare. By doing that, adding to the tax and the VAT and the external environment, there will be always a challenge on the operating costs for the locals to survive in the market. So when I was asked to take this study, I was asked what are the possible solutions you're going to bring on board. Well, one of the possible solutions to bring on board, which is a lot of healthcare providers have done, is basically local, is basically to develop a healthcare strategy to become more unique in their services and not to duplicate. In other words, they have a good catchment and a good reputation, but they need to think more from operational level to the strategical level. When doing that, you need always to understand your cost. And in this case, you need to go back as a local healthcare, whether a hospital owned by Bahraini or a centers. You need to be very efficient. You need also to understand your cost structures, and you need also to build a model, what we call joint ventures. A lot of these locals, Bahraini healthcare services, now they are engaged in what we call it accreditations, and accreditations in the healthcare is about 27 chapters. And this is give us opportunity. When we teach total quality course, we need really to understand where the economics of the country is going. So one of the things we need to know that when we teach total quality is to emphasize on the healthcare structure, because this is this is a great opportunity, and there will be a great employability in the industry. Matter of fact, in Bahrain, there is a potential of 100 jobs for quality in Bahrain. Just imagine if we just teach that. So you need to start with the assessment baseline. You need to go with the corporate component strategy. You deliver it and you evaluate. This is called an ABCD model as an example. You turn your ABC model into a mission, vision, goal, objective, initiative, and that. And that's really what Nahra, with the accreditation, they are doing. Majority of the hospitals in Bahrain, they are now under accreditations. Next to them will be the centers. Now, in doing this, how the Bahraini will react to survive in the market? Well, there are two options. One option is you close your business as a Bahraini, and you say, you know what, I cannot face the international investor in healthcare. It's like today I had a meeting with the people in healthcare in the country. Another one is that you look at the things from different angle. So how do you look at the things from different angle? One is you set your private strategy as a national healthcare to become more strategic, creating what we call mergers, acquisitions, and alliance. In order for a lot of people, local healthcare providers in Bahrain to survive, currently you need to build what we call mergers, a transition period. Another one we need to do acquisitions in a way that a lot of these healthcare providers who are old people, they have a clinic, you either buy them or you put them under what they call it HMO, with a health maintenance organization. In this case, the local healthcare provider, they will create a group, And that group will be an integrated group creating what we call economic. You will be very surprised. A lot of these people who enter the foreign investors in the healthcare industry, they are not really highly accredited. Many of them now, they are facing problems. So what's going to happen, many of them, the economic scale, they will leave this business. Because investors, they look always for profit. When they understand there is regulation, there is overhead costs, they will leave the field and they will leave it to you. In other words, our advice for the private healthcare locals is, in order to be prepared, these people is going to move out, you take their market share. And doing that is very simple. You need to really build a very strong transition period. The biggest challenges for private healthcare in Bahrain right now, if you sit with the physicians, this is based on our research, is the next 3 years. They are very tough times, very tough transition. Really, if you look at it, they are the similar as the educational system has gone through. So in order for you, you have now to be very efficient, very effective through that transmission period. Another thing, and my favorite word, is a branding. How I will create a brand for my healthcare services as a private healthcare provider? Well, through two things: creativity, and the most important, you always have to excite your patient about your services. Majority of the people, when they start business, they go with this level. They are meeting your expectation. Like when you buy a mobile, you are only buying a mobile based on a need. Another one, you get to the second level, which is exceeding the customer expectation, and here is the excitement. Wow, I get something so crazy. Well, this takes us to very interesting and a beautiful phenomena. This is a quote, not from me, from somebody. He's an Indian, inspiring guy, who said, "We need to disturb the present to sustain and win the future." Really, for every healthcare providers in Bahrain, the local, they gotta understand what Nahra is doing, what the government is doing, is disturbing the system, is trying to filter it in order for you to win. And another 3 minutes, and I'll finish. Beautifully, yes, beautifully, we have conducted a research, and these are 3 types of studies we have conducted. Basically, we look at the what people think of the quality of healthcare services provided by the government, and how people utilize the healthcare services provided by the government. Surprisingly, people still love the government healthcare, because when you ask them, they say because when you come to the specialty, to the brain, to the knowledge, to the experience, Ministry of Health, the government still have that win on the win. When you come to the private healthcare, also with the foreign investment, they are still really not branded themselves. They are only known to be as a complementary. Adding to that is the quality of healthcare. Interestingly, the majority of the people in Bahrain, they are really divided on the quality of healthcare. So they are mostly neutral. But really significantly, you will find some people still think that we have a good quality of healthcare. Last study we have is this study. And this study we look at what the healthcare professional provider, doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, provider, how they are really viewing their job satisfactions and the quality of healthcare delivered. Mean is there is a relationship between how satisfied you are as a physician toward what you are providing of quality healthcare. Well, in this study, you will see we compare this. This is an international study, and this is our study. In our study, I want to point for you 2 important things. The first one, what are the factors influence job satisfactions within the doctors, healthcare provider, nurses? Work environment, work-life balance. Ring the bell. Work-life balance and pay. See, in the US, pay is a criteria number 1, environment and quality. when you come to work-life balance, it's very important for us in this society is the family, is the life balance. So physician told us, for us to be satisfied, I must really have a good environment and a good life balance and a good pay. Interestingly, in the state, pay is the more. That's where I come. I always say capitalism. Last and not least, we're talking about the quality. We ask what are the factors which affect the quality of cares provided. Well, similarly, you have the load. You have here poor management. Look at our society. People are very sensitive to poor management, where in the US is not. But stress is another factor. So this is trying to explain for us, is there is really a significant, in this study, we look at if there is a significant difference between how happy people, physicians are in the private sector to how people are happy in the government sector. In this study, and if you are interested, I can give you, because I'm presenting for you 4 different studies, because I speak only once in a year, okay? 4 different studies. And those 4 different studies, they are saying this study says there is no significant difference between them. The message is very simple. I believe that private healthcare sectors is extremely important. We as a university, we should understand this is the booming economy, and this is really what we need to produce, a healthcare managers, not only business, we need also to produce healthcare accreditations, because if you do a study and you identify there is around 2,000 healthcare establishments. All of them need quality accreditation. If you come and look into the arena, there is only 2 people in Bahrain can do the job. Imagine what difference we can do for our student as employability. We train them, we produce job, and that's what we need. My advice from this study, embed healthcare quality accreditation within quality system. And I will be happy to teach this course next semester, because I taught it when I came in the beginning, but I believe I could guide it for one semester, put it all in the right framework, because this is a great. Thank you. I hope I done a good job. Thank you.